Hey, welcome back to How to Barbecue Right. I'm Malcolm Reed. Y'all, this fall weather's got me feeling like some comfort food, so I'm gonna do my version of a classic meatloaf. Let's get to cooking. For my version of meatloaf, I'm gonna use some ground beef and some ground pork. Now, traditionally, most people just use ground beef in a meatloaf, but what I've got is some 90-10 really lean Angus ground beef. And then to give us that fat elements, to give us a richness to it, I'm adding ground pork too. I've got a pound of each here on the platter. You could use any kind of ground meat for a meatloaf, but the combination of the beef and the pork really makes a good flavor, and it makes a really nice moist meatloaf. Now, to this ground meat, we've got to add a few things. We need a binder. We need something to catch it together. So first, we're going to start with just a couple eggs. I'm just going to lightly beat them. Then we're going to add that to our meat. So I've got about 1.5 cups of breadcrumbs. That's going to help it stick together. And I've also got a little bit of minced garlic going in, about 3 or 4 cloves, good medium-sized, finely diced onion. You can even shred this stuff if you wanted to. You don't want big chunks in it. And then we've got some fresh parsley that I've just diced up real fine. We're going to get this combining with our hands. We're going to doctor this meatloaf up. So I'm going to add just a little bit of ketchup to it. Classic meatloaf. I need a lot, just a little bit. Need a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, salt, pepper, garlic. Y'all seen it, that AP. And then I'm gonna use some Italian Stallion. If you got a favorite Italian seasoning, go ahead and add it to your meatloaf. The herbs, the different seasonings in it, it's gonna make it pop. It's gonna make it taste really good. One more mix, and that's all there is to it, y'all. You could do this ahead of time. Wrap it in some plastic wrap, put it in the refrigerator, cook it when you get home. Now when you've got it all combined, you can see the parsley, you can see the onions, the pork and the beef kind of melt together. Now this is where you could traditionally take it, put it in a loaf pan, cook it like that, but since we're doing it on the smoker, I want to get some flavor all around it. I'm just gonna freeform this meatloaf. So I've got a little sheet pan here with some butcher paper to keep it from sticking. We're just gonna put our meatloaf right on it. And then I'm gonna use my hands to give it the shape I want. It's gonna cook just like we kind of mold it here with our hands. I mean, I want it to have that loaf shape, but I want it to be a rustic look, and that's what you're gonna get by cooking it out of a pan. We're ready to cook this meatloaf, and you could cook it in the oven if you want to. Put it on 350, it's gonna take about an hour, but How to Barbecue Right is not gonna cook it in the oven. We're gonna put it on a pit. So I've got my silverback fired up today. I've got some pecan pellets in there to give us a little bit of good flavor. And we're just gonna leave the meatloaf on this little sheet pan. It's gonna go dead center of the grill. We're running at 350 degrees just like your oven, but we're getting that smoke, that pecan flavor on it. It's gonna make it taste a lot better than the oven will. Now while that meatloaf's smoking, let me show you this glaze we're using. Now this is a traditional classic meatloaf glaze. It starts with some brown sugar. Then we're gonna add a little bit of Worcestershire sauce and then ketchup. And that's really the 3 ingredients. And you can season it however you like. I want a little bit of heat, a little bit of flavor to it. So I've got some white pepper, a little bit of cayenne pepper for a little extra heat, and then some paprika. Give us a little bit of color. But you just wanna whip this up a little bit. And that's just an easy glaze. And once you get all that sugar whooped into that glaze, that's it, meatloaf sauce. Let's go check on our loaf. It's been about 35 minutes. It's looking good. It's starting to get some color to it. I'm gonna spin it around, but at this point, after 35 minutes, I wanna start the glaze on the outside. And all I'm gonna do is take a brush and just put it right on the outside of the meatloaf. I'm gonna get me a bunch out here. That way I can paint it down, let it run. May not need all of it, but I'm gonna get a good coating on the outside. We need about 25 more minutes, so we'll check on it about 10, 15 minutes. See how our glaze is doing, maybe spin it again. Just let that glaze kind of caramelize. All right, y'all, it's been 10 minutes. Glaze is looking good, but I'm gonna put a little more. I like a little thick glaze on my meatloaf. We're not quite done. We still probably got about 15, 20 more minutes of cooking. Give it another little spin this way, why not? Close that lid, let it keep cooking. So I've been cooking this meatloaf right at an hour. It's all glazed up, looking good. Got my little thermometer. I wanna make sure that it's about 165 internal. 165, 164. It is right there, y'all. That's where I want it. I don't want it to dry out. So that's the perfect temperature. Glaze looks good. So I just let it sit here on the cutting board, took it off that butcher paper and let it rest for about 10 minutes. That's all it really needs. Doesn't need really long, but I want to cut the middle of it. Let's see what it looks like. I'm just gonna grab a knife. Hopefully it doesn't crumble out on me. That's one thing you never know about meatloaf, but this feels nice. All right. Ooh, it's hot. So let's turn it, y'all. What does the inside of this meatloaf look like? Oh, look at that. That is beautiful. You can see the parsley, the onions, The meat's cooked all the way through. We got that glaze on the outside. A little bit of pink from that smoke ring trying to happen. Now to serve it, of course, you slice it. That's all you do to meatloaf. So you can do as thick or as thin as you want. Dinner-sized portions. That's what I'm going with. All right, so how does it taste? That's the most important part of anything we do. I got that little butt-end piece that I want to try because it's got the glaze all the way around it. Let's see the texture and the flavor of this meatloaf. Oh, my mama and granny be proud over this one. That is textbook meatloaf. Stays together, doesn't crumble out. I'm telling you, some mashed potatoes, some English peas. That's all you need to go with this, and you got a fine meal. That's comfort food. Y'all, thanks for hanging out with us here today at How to Barbecue Right. If you like what we're doing, subscribe to the channel. You know you can find us on all the social outlooks of the How to Barbecue Right. And Shell and I are going to be talking about this meatloaf recipe, all the other delicious stuff we've been doing on our weekly podcast. So y'all tune in and give that a listen. It's time for dinner. Give me another bite. That's perfect meatloaf.